All right. Good to see everybody here at the Voice of College Football on a Thursday for our 6 o'clock Eastern Time call-in show, huh? Sorry I'm late. Appreciate you waiting. Thanks for being here. I've gathered up some notes from watching ACC and SEC Media Days, or ACC Kickoff, technically ACC Kickoff, SEC Media Days for the past week. Recorded a segment with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football on Kentucky, Mark Stoops and company today. That'll be posted on the SEC channel. And also, let's see, I posted videos earlier today. Check them out on Dabo Sweeney and also Mike Norvell, what they had to say. And the ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips, he had some things to say, of course, as he took the podium at ACC Kickoff, and I responded. That's been posted to the main channel. Again, Jim Phillips of the ACC, that's been posted to the main channel. Then we've got Dabo Sweeney. I made those comments on the Clemson channel, and the Mike Norvell ACC Kickoff videos on the Florida State channel, of course. So welcome in. We appreciate everybody being here, and I will get to your comments in just a second as soon as I run down just a few notes that I've taken. I should have basically kept a running tab of comments made during ACC Kickoff and probably even more so the SEC Media Days. Should have kept a running tab. Let me first identify myself here. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Appreciate you being here. For anybody that's stopping by for a first time, we talk college football all the time, 24/7, 365. We've got a Discord that you can access by going to Patreon, patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV, and sign up there. $5 a month. You get my predictions on the season, which are pretty darn good most of the time. Meaning every season you're going to make money. That's been my 40-year plus track record. You will make money against the spread just about every year. It was about 58% last year. I'm not an expert. I'm not a odds maker. I'm not a handicapper, but I pick most of the games correctly. Usually pretty well. Again, you can pay somebody $1,000 and you can get maybe better predictions sometimes, or you pay us $5 a month there on Patreon. You get my predictions and the predictions of all sorts of people, including guys like Steve Dace and Tony Gerdeman and all sorts. I still have yet to reach out to those guys to see if they'll participate this year, but we had about 15 to 20 media guests last year. And then, of course, what has become the crown jewel of our Patreon offering is the Discord, of course, 24/7, 365 college football chat there in Discord. We've got a separate chat for all 5 conferences, the major conferences. And as it explodes and expands, we've got about 10 people that jumped on here in July. We've got about 60 total. Then we will add more. I hesitate calling them channels. They're called channels on Discord, but I don't want to confuse anyone with the channels that we have here on YouTube. They're chats, chat rooms. We've got one for each of the 5 conferences, plus a national one, plus a non-football one. But as the season unfolds and we get thousands of folks in there, thousands, then, of course, we will determine, hey, we need one for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. We need one for USC specifically. Tim would like that. So again, appreciate everybody being here. You can contribute Venmo, PayPal, and Cash Apps. Already seen some super chats here, so I'm so appreciative of that. Thank you so much for that. But again, if you want to bypass YouTube, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. So here's a few of my notes, and then I'll get to the live chat. I'm going to save the best for last. Big Game Boomer, who we've had here for a discussion a few times, one a couple of years ago and one just maybe 6 weeks ago, Big Game Boomer. So he produces all sorts of interesting lists there on Twitter. Good guy. But he had posted something about the ACC having the best quarterbacks. I don't necessarily argue that. I would have to match up the ACC and the SEC and go side by side and really come up with a rating system to distinguish which conference has the best quarterbacks, the ACC or the SEC. But then the statement came both from Big Game Boomer. And then I heard this also on the ACC network from, I believe, Mark Packer. I hope I didn't botch his name. Packer and Durham. I don't remember their first names, but Packer and Durham, they've got a morning show. I do now have the ACC network. I did have the ACC network. I just never watched those guys. Probably too early for me. Anyway, I'm not going to evaluate them and their broadcasting abilities. I'm sure they're really good at what they do. From what I've heard, they're good. Not secondhand, but the little bit that I've heard, they are true professionals and locked into the ACC. They're both ACC guys. Anyway, Packer made the comment that the ACC has the best quarterbacks, and I was okay with that. But then when it got to the by far statement, okay, wait a minute. No. Not by far. Not by far. We've heard way too much homerism out of the SEC contingent on the SEC network this week and out of the ACC network contingent. And when it comes out of the ACC network contingent, it sounds a bit ridiculous because it's not a good conference. It's got the potential to be, but it's just not a good football conference. They don't win half their games against the rest of the Power Five. That's been going on now for 5 years. It's not, listen, ACC fans, I'm sorry. It's not a good football conference. It may change this year, may prove us wrong this year. It wouldn't be proving me wrong. I'm just evaluating what I've seen the last 5 years, and it's not difficult to do. Not a good football conference. I made this statement a number of times last year and during the offseason that the ACC did have the best quarterbacks in college football this past season, 2021. Tyler Van Dyke, Devin Leary, Malik Cunningham, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Sam Hartman. I could name a few others. Brendan Armstrong. I don't want to leave anybody really good out, and I have. But those are the headliners. Really good quarterback play. Excellent quarterback play in the ACC. Lost Kenny Pickett. Lost Sam Howell. Still extremely good at quarterback. Possibly the best in college football. All right. But the SEC, Bryce Young, Spencer Rattler, Hendon Hooker, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Will Rogers. I went to that extent. I think I'm missing somebody there. So I had a first tier that I listed on Twitter. And I believe it was 9 quarterbacks. It was Bryce Young, Spencer Rattler, Hendon Hooker, 31 touchdowns, 3 picks last year. Anthony Richardson was at the back of the line, actually, not number 4. Who else did I put? Will Rogers was exceptional, of course, in the Mike Leach offense. 36 touchdowns, 9 picks last year. Threw for almost 5,000 yards. Spencer Rattler, I said Rattler. Oh, hello, Stetson Bennett. Thank you, Stetson Bennett. And then I tacked on a few more. I threw 8 or 9 out there. 8 or 9 to start. Lost Matt Corral, of course, from last year. Started with 8 or 9. And then we could also have exceptional quarterback play, possibly from Jackson Dart or Luke Altmaier if he wins the job at Ole Miss. We could have excellent quarterback play at LSU from either Garrett Nussmeier or Max Johnson. Hello, forgot him, 27 touchdowns, 6 picks. Or Jaden Daniels, of course, the dual threat. 17 touchdowns, 2 picks as a freshman. Just a ridiculous statement to make that the ACC by far has the best quarterbacks. All right. And then we had, of course, and I brought this up to Steve Hellwagon during our Ohio State show. There was a discussion on the SEC network about the Heisman Trophy. I tend to shy away from Heisman Trophy talk, just from the standpoint of people asking me who is going to win the Heisman Trophy, because basically what you're asking me to do is predict what other people will vote on. And many of those people are incompetent they are not qualified to vote for the Heisman Trophy. Many of the Heisman Trophy voters are not qualified. They should not have Heisman Trophy votes. They know less about college football than you do. Many of them are qualified. Many are not. So I take myself out of it, even though I've produced plenty of Heisman Trophy videos, because it's content that people want to see. So I will probably produce another one. And then at some point in the season, I will produce a video with Heisman Trophy contenders. But always understand that when you're asking for a prediction, it's a prediction based on what other people are going to vote on. Just like the ridiculous question I heard a few times this week, asking a player, Bryce Young in particular, are you going to win the Heisman Trophy? Well, unless you give him a vote, which he now has one, so he's got one vote. He's got his own. Past Heisman Trophy winners vote on the Heisman Trophy. So Bryce Young, much like Archie Griffin 45 years ago, the only players, well, Tim Tebow as well, able to, I'm thinking about guys that obviously Griffin repeated and Bryce Young has the opportunity. Other players have had the opportunity as well, but Johnny Manziel. So anyway, there have been players that have been able to vote for themselves. So unless you're going to limit it to one vote and that's given to Bryce Young, how is he supposed to answer that question? Are you going to win the Heisman Trophy next? And you can ask him, are you going to throw 40 touchdowns? You can say, probably. He's got some control over that. Not complete control. He can't block or catch the ball. Ridiculous questioning. The Heisman Trophy question. All right, but getting back to Joe Tessitore, during the Heisman Trophy conversation, one of the SEC Network panelists, and again, I have great respect for most of them. Greg McElroy might be the best in the business. He's exceptional. Greg McElroy, exceptional. Anyway, they're being asked about their opinions on the Heisman Trophy. If I were them, I would state exactly what I just stated. I'd say, I've got all sorts of opinions, but I'm going to tell you, first and foremost, if you're asking me who's going to win the Heisman, I can't predict what other people are going to vote on. But anyway, C.J. Stroud, of course, was brought up, and Tessitore said, yeah, but you really can't compare Stroud's performance, his numbers, against who versus Bryce Young. Against who? Ohio State's schedule is a joke. I understand you work for the SEC network. I understand the SEC is the best conference. It is the best conference. Really, nobody can debate that. I wish we could debate it, but we can't. Maybe someday we will be able to make that argument and we could debate it like it was 15 years ago, 17, 18 years ago. But it's not a debate. It's the best conference. I tweeted out after I heard that, sure, fact, SEC the best conference. Fact, I forget how I stated the rest of the tweet, but basically, okay. Now let's calm down after that. I know you're locked in on the SEC, and that's all you cover, and you don't know what's going on elsewhere. But, be reasonable. Act like you know something. Ohio State schedule is a joke. Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Notre Dame. Okay. That's not worth giving any more time to. All right. Again, I produced a video released earlier today about the ACC and the ACC commissioners' message, his theme, his delivery from the podium at ACC kickoff. Check out the video, and also on Florida State and Clemson channels what I had to say about Mike Norvell and about Dabo Swinney. I'm going to produce the first probably not the first ever. It's not the first ever Vanderbilt video. And I know it's not going to be timely because Clark Lee addressed SEC Media Days a few days ago, and I wanted to produce it then. But I'm not going to give any more away of whether I support and back and admire what Clark Lee had to say about Vanderbilt football, or I'm going to rip him to shreds. I will leave that up to you all to see when I produce the video. And then we go to the creme de la creme. I still have yet to hear it come out of his mouth. I have been DVRing everything and have caught up with what I've needed to catch up with, and we will watch more tonight. But I was out of the house for much of this today, and of course the SEC and the ACC going on at the same time. And pardon me, ACC, I have prioritized the SEC, much like I do during the football season. But Pat Narduzzi, I verified this with a number of people, stated that Pitt would win the Big Ten. Why? Why make that statement? Pitt won the ACC last year. Congratulations. Congratulations, Pat Narduzzi, for breaking out of a 7-5 monotony at Pitt, or excuse me, 7-7 in 2018 as ACC Coastal Division champion, 7-7. 7-7, 7 losses for a division champion. And yes, I understand why many of you say you can't just let any division champion play for a conference championship. I get your point. I still like the current format for many ways. But yeah. Why is that stated? Now, was he asked? So if he's asked, that's more understandable. But if he was just trying to make a point that Pitt would win the Big Ten, we can't prove this one way or the other. So let's be factual about it. Maybe they would win the Big Ten. But I think most of us reasonably can look at the performance of Pitt football on a yearly basis. Even their best year, this past Pitt season in 2021. Let's not. He acts like they just ripped through the ACC for like a 5th consecutive year. No, this was Pitt's best season since the late 80s. Really, their best season. They won a conference championship since Dan Marino, and just after Dan Marino in the early to mid 80s. I believe Pitt has posted one 10-win season prior to 2021. I believe it was like 2006, 2009. 2009 sounds right. 10-3 since the 80s. Never had won the conference championship in the ACC. Last time Pitt won a conference championship was the Big East, and then they lost to Urban Meyer in Utah by 4 touchdowns in the Fiesta Bowl. They were clearly not good enough to play in a New Year's Six or whatever we called it at the time, BCS Bowl game. Pat Narduzzi, that's just dumb. It's just a dumb statement to make. Shut your mouth. It's just, you have every right to say whatever you want, but it's just dumb. You played probably the 3rd best team in the conference without your quarterback, but they missed arguably the best running back in the country. A distant 3rd best team in the conference. All right. That's what I've got for you from ACC and SEC Media Days this week. And of course, the Coastal Division met with the media today, so we'll check that out later at some point, hear what guys like Jeff Collins had to say. And of course, we want to hear from Mike Elko of Duke. Those will be the priorities, Duke and Georgia Tech. Just kidding, Miami fans, North Carolina fans. So anyway, we'll check that out a little bit later. All right, appreciate everybody being here. Let's see what you've got with us here. And we got about 130 on the line. We had about 50 on the line just about 5 minutes ago. So you may have missed my rant on the ridiculous statements made both by the media and by coaches at media days this week. And I probably missed many. And we are going with the blue today. Network colors are silver, red, and black. Going with the blue today, though. Exactly there, Charisse. Wow, Pitt had one successful year since the late 80s. Wow, bravo for you. Kirby's Pfizer, everything is a hot take in media these days, and the public is burnt out on it and tuning out. And you guys know, if you've watched me on a regular basis, I don't typically pounce on the media. I don't talk about the media very often. Like, I'm not on here either praising the media, or what would get more clicks would be to rail on the media. I don't do that. For one thing, I understand that most of them are capable, if not excellent. Most of them. I also understand that sometimes they misspeak. There was a comment made the other day about Bryce Young having the opportunity to be the first two-time winner of the Heisman Trophy. That's obviously false, but I give some leeway there because I have often, many times said things that I knew better. And then somebody will correct me and I'll think, I knew that. So sometimes if you talk long enough, and I do here 30 to 40 hours a week, you're going to say some things that you either stated incorrectly or didn't state them the way that you meant them to be stated, or you just simply, like, I don't know how many times I've stated things and I know them like the back of my hand. I know them as well as I know my address, and I still just in the moment said something different. So let's have some grace. That's a good thing to have in life. That's a word that you never hear anymore. Never hear that word anymore. And there should be room for some grace. So I'm going to leave the link as I get to some of these super chats that I much appreciate. We're leaving the link to join the show there. We've got a Miami show coming up at 8 o'clock Eastern as well. Join us on the Miami channel with the Wholesome One at 8 Eastern time. All right, let's get to some super chats here. I just dropped the link in the comment section in the chat. Oh, super chats, where are you? I saw you. There we go. Falcon Rex. I like Pitt. Falcon Rex from Pittsburgh. Didn't know that. No way they win the Big Ten. No way they win the Big Ten. All right, 2 calls coming in. We will get to them in just a second. Want to make sure I clean up the super chats. Falcon Rex, super sticker. Thank you so much for that. Falcon Rex, appreciate you. I'm sure we'll see you later tonight during the Miami show. Christopher is pointing out that I've got a fan somewhere. That's nice of you, Christopher. I was not aware of having any fans. No fans. I don't have any. So, yes, Mark only fans. Okay. Anyway, don't know what that refers to. Lemansky, hooray for all moms. This super chat is for you. I am out of beer. Oh, yes. I noted because I got into the chat, and sometimes when I'm that late, I want to let you know, hey, I'm almost there. Hang on. Thank you for being patient. Yes. Got my mom a nice large, whatever kind of salad she likes with chicken and whatever else. Lemansky, thank you so much for that super chat coming in there. And Mark, are you still hiding before kickoff with no mailing address? Yeah, I've got to correct the mailing address for the helmets. So we will get that fixed here. I've got to touch base with our folks at iPostal. Yeah. All right, let's line it up here. The Voice of College Football. I will have to go to the second call because the first call, the device is not connected. We got the real MVP here to talk some college football. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of surprised you didn't talk about Georgia's contract extension for Kirby Smart.
Oh, yes. I did not read an article on it, but as I understand it, or maybe I'm just guessing. I'm going to take a guess here. There's a stipulation in Nick Saban's contract that he probably has to be the highest paid coach in the league, if not the country. And so Kirby Smart's contract has bumped him to number one, correct? And so then Saban's contract stipulation is going to kick in.
I'm not aware of that type of stuff. I just know it's 10 years, $112.5 million. I thought Lincoln Riley was speculated to be the highest paid coach when he moved to USC.
So this is what I know. I saw the headline on Kirby, and then I saw a couple people comment on Twitter that Nick Saban's going to get a raise. And I thought maybe that was just kind of a joke, like he's got to be the highest paid, so Alabama's going to kick in. Or there was someone who tweeted something that led me to believe that Nick Saban has a stipulation in his contract that he's automatically going to get some kind of hike.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I'm uninformed on this, so hopefully somebody else will be able to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Another thing I'd like to ask you, you didn't mention with Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner.
Yes.
He was moral grandstanding the Olympic sports.
Yes.
And saying that they are just equally as important as college football and college basketball. I think this is lunacy, but what's your take on it?
Well, so there's a difference between business and what do I want to phrase the other category as? Not real life, but, for example, if somebody got on here and said teachers, and we'll just use teachers should make more money than athletes, I would have no issue with that. Teachers should make more. They have a more important job than athletes do. I would have no issue with that. But the cold hard truth is athletes generate a ton of money and they are compensated based on the money that they generate. So because the NFL, the NBA, et cetera, generate so much money, they can pay the athlete. Are they worth that? Well, we can have a debate all day, but the economy tells us they are worth it. Now, if you're saying in terms of a real life, what should be, then let's say you hate sports and say, this is a complete waste and it's not a value to society and they shouldn't be paid anything. I get your point, but we're in a society where, there's an economy and there's money pumped into the economy and it's a supply and demand system. Therefore, athletes should be paid and are compensated based on the popularity of the sport and the money it generates. So they're worth it. In that way, they are worth it. So it's the same thing here, where you could make the statement that the tennis team puts in just as much hard work and they're just as valuable as people and student athletes and all that business. And I completely agree with that. But the business truth is that it doesn't generate the money. Therefore, it's not worth what football and men's basketball is worth.
Well, is it fair to say that if this is Jim Phillips' mindset with equaling the Olympic sports to college football and college basketball, the ACC won't be around much longer?
Well, I will say this to Real MVP. I think we can share this common thought that because you and I have had conversations about the Pac-12's demise, and much of that can be linked to their fine commissioner, Larry Scott. And Jim Phillips is talking a lot like Larry Scott.
Yeah. It's great company for him to be in, isn't it? How come these commissioners aren't real leaders? How come they don't lead? They just follow.
I did not look into Jim Phillips' background. I will have to do that to see what set him up for this job. And I don't want to judge him based on one speech. And I had some, so I produced a video and basically went through his speech from the podium, and I criticized some things. Other things I said, I can understand where he's coming from. And, I wasn't nitpicking like some people when he at one point made a statement about having 17 teams. I'm not going to,
no, that's me.
He slipped up.
Right.
Not a big deal. But yeah, the statement that hit everybody was when he said, we measure up in everything, which is not true. But anyway, we measure up in everything in terms of football and athletics overall and academics, except money, except revenue. That's the only thing we need to address and need to catch up on. Well, that's a really big one.
Except the most important thing. They got everything else solved up, except the most important thing that
Which
only matters.
Even true. I wish I would have been there. My next question, I would have thrown up my hand, done some quick math, and said, well, the ACC is, 48 games under 500 against the other 4 conferences the last 5 years. Are you really on par with everybody else?
Yeah. And something else you mentioned in your video was about Notre Dame. I understand it's not his problem, but he's the commissioner. Commissioners aren't there to identify problems. They're there to come up with solutions.
Yeah.
So if he's a good commissioner, he should get Notre Dame into the ACC.
Yeah. He inherited a bad TV contract, and so my understanding of this TV contract is I think I can make a fair assessment that it's both a bad TV contract because the ACC just doesn't demand more money based on eyeballs. Like it's in some ways it's fair, but they also did negotiate a bad deal. So it's a little bit of both. Like they can't command SEC or Big Ten money because they don't get those kind of TV ratings, but they also didn't negotiate a good contract. So it's a little bit of both. So it's almost like you can compare this to a lot of things. You can compare this to being the president. Well, suddenly you get sworn in and it's your problem. You didn't create it, but it's your problem. So Notre Dame's your problem, and a bad TV contract is your problem.
Right, and he's got to come up with solutions. And
yeah,
he probably should do it like now if he wants his conference to not be in this perilous situation that people are saying it's in.
Yeah, he didn't offer. I would have expected some. Not like, here's my plan and here it is, I've got it all worked out, but he didn't provide any idea of a solution. It was all just, we got to figure it out and we're going to get creative.
Yeah, that's, no matter how creative you want to get, some things are just so self-truth. Alabama and Georgia, 2 of the 3 best teams in college football this year. So you can get as creative as one. But the ACC is not going to be as good as the Big Ten and the SEC in college football. And until that changes, until they close the gap somewhat, it's going to matter.
Yeah, and don't tell us that you are as good as everybody else.
Right. Mark, that's all I got for you. Go Cats, go SEC. Still number 1.
Yes, we talked a little Kentucky football. We'll get that video posted as well. Thanks to Real MVP. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. We had Chris in first, and then he was disconnected. So we'll go to Chris right now. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you being here. What's going on?
Oh, I had technical difficulties on my end. I think I'm not very technical savvy, unfortunately.
Well,
it's not my strong suit. It's not my strong suit by a long shot, but I apologize for it too. I think you commented several times that I tend to turn people away, and if I do that, I apologize. That's really not what I ever try to do. But if I ever do that, or if you sense that that's happening, you don't have to feel bad about cutting me out or whatever. It's okay. I won't take it personal. Because I understand that some of the things I bring up aren't really popular subjects, and they might not appeal to many of your fans. And I don't want to drive your fans away. So if that ever happens, or if you get the sense that it's happening, don't hesitate to cut it short. That's okay with me. You won't offend me. I was just going to. I wasn't really aware that Narduzzi had made the comment about being, capable, I guess, of challenging for a Big Ten title, but. I guess I think what that might be going there is that's kind of like raising the bar a little bit, because I think I've already kind of told you I did the number crunching or whatever, and of course that's based on whether I know how to do it, which I have a sense that I think I do, but it just turned out, like I said, that Ohio State finished first. I don't know, did you have a chance to look at those numbers yet?
But this is first in history, right?
Yeah. Well, I tried. Well, as far as back as the history I could get, I mean, it probably doesn't include like the early titles that were won by the Ivy League schools, but probably since I wouldn't know exactly when the history would have been started on that website, but maybe 1920 or something. I'm not really sure, but yeah, for whatever history that they were covering, they finished first, which I just thought that was interesting because that wasn't what I expected would be. I anticipated it might be like Alabama or maybe even like Notre Dame, or what kind of surprised me. I'm not really pushing any agenda on you or anything, but Texas actually finished pretty high on that. I didn't really. I mean, I didn't anticipate it, but when looking back on it now, I mean, it makes sense because Texas spent a long time in the Southwest Conference, and I think weren't they usually the best team in that conference? I mean, there weren't too many teams that challenged them the time they were in their conference, were there? During their Southwest Conference
challenge, but yeah, they were the best team. So.
By quite a bit, I think. In general, I think they were pretty dominant, weren't they?
Yeah, from start to finish. There were certain periods of time where, for example, Arkansas in the 60s and 70s was good, really good. Yeah. Like
in 1968 or something like that.
Yeah.
Weren't they pretty good, where they almost won the national championship? Or am I wrong?
Yeah. Let's see. Arkansas won it in 64, or they have a claim on it. And then, then there was the controversy with the Richard Nixon game, Arkansas, Texas, when they were 1-2 in 68 or 9.
So that wasn't, the president can't choose the national champion. Is that the idea? I don't know what the controversy was about, but was it because Texas deserved it more? Was that the idea?
Made his opinion known about who should be the national champion.
Well, they said he was a pretty smart guy. I mean, it might not just have been just an opinion. Richard Nixon, they said he was a pretty smart guy.
He was.
Yeah. So it might have been a little bit more than just an opinion, right? I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else. I just wondered what you might think about it.
What about Richard Nixon making that claim?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that was, I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know that there's enough documentation to back up or confirm whether he just, as a fan, liked Texas and threw it out there that they should be the national champion, or he really was a big fan and and crunched numbers, and obviously that kind of stuff was not accessible to everyone at the time. So I kind of doubt whether it was that well researched.
Do you mind if I ask you what your preferred method would be apart from what we kind of have already now? Did you have a preferred, maybe was there a preferred way that you had that maybe would have lent itself to credibility that you were maybe a fan of?
To determine the national champion?
Well, as far as, I mean, you've given several examples of teams that, I mean, and I'm not saying it to be contradictory to you, but I'm not sure I would necessarily include certain teams that you've included, and I don't know exactly what you're basing it on. Some of your, just kind of curious what you think's a fair way to select one.
Well, I'm basing it on that at some point, I would say, and it happened gradually, that we got a clear distinction of which conferences were playing a higher level of football than the rest of them. So if let's say it's the 1970s, we have a clear distinction with the Big Ten, the Pac-10, or Pac-8, the SEC, the Southwest Conference, and the Big 8 as playing a higher level of football than everyone else.
Uh-huh.
So that I start there, and then look at everyone's records and start with their records. And then if there is some kind of distinction between, let's say there's 4 11-1 teams, and there's not a strong distinction in any way.
Uh-huh.
And there generally, in my opinion, is not, because if all 4 of those 11-1 teams came from conferences in which we would call them power conferences today, major conferences, and they did not play one another, then that's why I have so many national champions named, because I don't think it's fair to name one of them a national champion and not the other 3. If none of them play, they all play in major conferences, and they all have the same record.
Well, now, I mean, go ahead.
The last distinction I would make is there were times at which I gave a team, let's say a Boise State or a TCU at the time, some recognition for having the right, in my view, to claim a national championship because they had, let's say, an undefeated season and played a couple major conference teams that were strong teams. And there was not a clear-cut winner of the national championship, and the winner of the national championship or winners of the national championship on the major college level all had at least one loss. Okay.
Then I'm not, and again, this isn't necessarily to refute anything you just said, but like you said, Texas Christian, and the only championship that I'm familiar with that they probably deserve would be 1938. And even that year there was a split championship. And so I don't know, for me, it's like, it's not quite as simple, I guess, as just, acknowledging. And then in 1935, they beat LSU, I think 3-2 in the Sugar Bowl, but I don't know if that was, but they also lost to SMU, and SMU lost to Stanford. And I think Stanford.
It's not simple. No. I agree. It's not simple. And the further you go back in time, the more complicated it becomes, because there are less games played, and there are less games against capable opponents. And then there's also less of a distinction between, okay, these are the leagues that are playing a high level of football and producing, a high caliber of NFL type player on a regular basis, versus there's a clear distinction. Today, there is a clear distinction between Power 5 and the Group of 5, generally.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with that statement. I think it's a pretty clear divide. I think it's kind of been that way for a while. Yeah, they didn't used to call it the G5, though. I think they just called it like mid-major or whatever it was. But I think I even told you what I thought the separation was, but I don't know if that's really that important that I make mention of it again. But yeah, I think there's always been a separation between the 2 divisions, I guess, that they call it. Now they call it G5. I think before it was just a mid-major sort of thing. Yeah. It was a lower classification within Division 1. That and I don't know that anybody ever really breached it, except like I said, in 1984, the Brigham Young challenged for it, but in all honesty, I don't know that they really ever. I think I already told you, they rose to the top, but they didn't actually win the title because that they didn't play for the title. I mean, it's kind of what it boiled down to. I mean, they were in it, but they didn't play for it. But the other thing, I think I already told you this too, but I kind of did just because out of curiosity, because I kind of wanted to see how they compared against each other, Washington and Brigham Young. And what I actually, and you can dispute this if you want, and I don't know how accurate when I come up with something, it's a little, I think you kind of know it's a little out in left field, but what I seemed to discover was that against the spread, which is kind of like against they actually kind of were about the same. So it's like, it's interesting because, so there really isn't a clear champion. It's like, and I'm not saying it's as simple as like, okay, well, that means you can pick one or the other. It's not really that simple either. You have to kind of base it on like their history, which is kind of what I do, which might even give Washington an advantage because over their history, they've won more games against BYU than BYU's beaten them. And, but I'm not saying I would necessarily use that myself, but the other thing I was going to tell you, and I know it sounds like kind of like a wonk for BYU, and I'm really not, because I didn't never go there. But the one thing to weigh into consideration, though, and I think I've told you this before, they were good enough to advance to the championship game in '84, and in 1996 they were good enough to win the belt. And if you kind of include those together, kind of like glue them together, like if you had to glue them together, that kind of equals one normal championship. I know it's kind of a strange way to look at it, but if you could do that, though, I mean, then it kind of removes some of the people's misgivings about having a BYU included, because there's one that they did get credit for, and there's one that they kind of didn't. I mean, the belt championship really isn't an official championship, so kind of, if you put them against each other, it's like they actually did win one title. It's kind of the way I look at it. And then that should kind of cure some of people's misgivings, because it's like, well, BYU never should have won it. Well, to not include them, I think, would be worse than to have giving them credit for something I think that they eventually got enough, what do you want to call it, to win. I think they actually deserve the one championship they have. And that, you can weigh that against what you think of my opinion, but that's my opinion.
Well, as you know, I produced a video on it, and I in no such way tried to take away a championship from BYU. I just noted that there were other teams involved that played much more difficult schedules, and they didn't play what I would consider to be a legitimate schedule, but they did go undefeated, and of course, we're the only team to do so. And the only thing I would say about your label of a championship game, they played a bowl game that they, of course, needed to win to claim the #1 spot and be awarded that by the major services. I wouldn't call that a championship game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there wasn't a championship game.
Do you know, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there, and you might think it's a ridiculous comparison to make, and it might be. In all fairness, it might be a ridiculous comparison. But what I determined was, in an expanded field, like let's say 32 teams, it's very possible that Michigan might have been seeded as an eighth seed in a 32. And I'm not saying they necessarily do. That's kind of like giving Michigan like an extra credit almost. But let's just, for sake of argument, let's just say they're an eighth seed in a 32, which means they're actually barely make a 32 field tournament. Well, in the last year's NCAA, North Carolina was an 8th seed. So BYU, if Michigan had been in a 32 team tournament as an 8th seed, Brigham Young's defeating Michigan is roughly equivalent to Kansas beating North Carolina. And I know you don't like that comparison because it's two different sports and two different, but I'm just saying, I mean, we can say it really wasn't a championship game, but as far as seeding, it's actually about the same as if Kansas had beat North Carolina. And I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, you don't have to like that comparison or not, but it might be a fair comparison, though.
I understand what you're doing there, but again, I just don't think
Yeah, I know you don't agree with it, but I'm just saying, though, that, yeah, if they'd had a 32-team tournament with Michigan, and if Michigan advanced to the championship game, which they probably wouldn't have, and if they'd have played Brigham Young, that's kind of what it would have been like, kind of like that.
So you're placing Michigan as the 32nd best team in the country in 1984.
Well, in a 32 team, yeah, as an 8th seed. Yeah, as an 8th seed. Yeah. That's like the lowest seed you can have in a 32 team. Yeah.
Are you doing that just to fit them up against BYU?
No,
or is your proficiency rating?
I think they actually do qualify as an 8th seed, and it's based on the protocol that I apply, but I think they actually do qualify as an 8th seed. And so I just thought the people that want to keep discounting it, they might want to consider the fact that North Carolina was an 8th seed. Because if they want to keep saying, well, they didn't play anybody any good, well, I guess you could say the same thing about Kansas beating North Carolina. I mean, I'm just saying that's kind of about what it was like.
Sure.
Okay.
If you want to parallel men's basketball and football.
And football, yeah, which I know isn't the same, but it's I'm just saying roughly about the same. I'm not saying identically, like it's the exact same thing. I know it's not, and I know Michigan would have had to win, and so would have Brigham Young. To advance, they would have had to win 3 or 4 games, but so I'm not saying it's even the same that way at all, but
I don't follow men's basketball, but I did for a long, long time. So I know how it all works, but I just don't follow it currently. I don't think anyone here who's watched college basketball would be surprised if the 15th best team, whoever was considered to be roughly the 15th best team in men's basketball before March Madness, won the national championship. I don't know that a lot of people would be shocked by that. But the 15th best team in college football virtually has no chance to win a tournament.
The parallel I was trying to draw, Mark, is North Carolina wasn't the 8th best team; they were an 8th seed. In other words, they would have been they weren't the 8th best team.
I understand the process.
Okay, good.
They're in a region. They're in one of 4 regions, so they're roughly the 29th to the 32nd best team or ranked team in the country.
And Michigan, in all fairness, finished about 50th. I mean, I try to be as fair as I can. I don't try to I don't try to deceive anybody. And, actually BYU beating Michigan was about the same as if they'd have beaten UAB in last year's Independence Bowl. They were about as good of a team as the team that they lost to in the Independence Bowl.
Well, Chris, we appreciate the conversation, and especially when I open up my college football history channel. I think you'll be a welcome addition there, but I don't know that everyone wants to move on.
I understand that. All
right, Chris. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. Let's bring in DeAndre.
What's up, Mark? How you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Good. So the first thing I want to talk about, Rutgers, Maryland, South Carolina, Missouri, Texas A&M. When they joined the conference, did that improve their football program?
Okay, let's break it down. Out of all those, I would say that Texas A&M, yes. Everybody else, off the top of my head, no.
Okay, my point is, again, we go back talking about, heard what y'all said about the ACC, so I have to defend them. It's not the commissioner's job to make the ACC football program. I get that he's part of the revenue part, but it's not his job to make the football teams good. I looked at Syracuse program. Since they joined the ACC, even when they came over for the Big East, it started to slide. I just don't see how everybody said, put more money in it, put more money in it. South Carolina makes way more money than Clemson does in football. So does Ole Miss. These programs, they've been decent, but they haven't been great. It's all about, and I want to say this the right way. If you take Ohio State and put them in the ACC, and their heyday, the last couple years, I know they had a down year for Ohio State standards. Ohio State would do the same thing in the ACC that they did in the Big Ten. Clemson probably would do the same thing in the Big Ten. I mean, I'm just saying.
Except for running into each other.
Right. They're not in the same conference.
Sure.
Like, we put Alabama, Georgia probably would have done the same thing. There's probably, I know Clemson had a 10-3 season. DJ looked terrible last year. But my point is, when you have that, there's only been like 5 or 6 good, decent teams over the last, like since Clemson started their run. Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, LSU, somewhat. I mean, there really ain't really been that many great teams. I mean, I just honest.
Oklahoma.
Listen. Go ahead, Mark.
I just threw in Oklahoma. So what's your point?
My point is like everybody thinks this throwing money at these programs is going to solve.
Oh, I got you. No, that doesn't solve anything. But it's like look at Texas recruiting. Their recruiting should lead to them winning football games, but they've only had one good season in the last 12 or 13 years. So that's not the end of it. Yeah, throwing money at problems doesn't, but you need the money. Well, let me put it this way. If let's say everything stays the way it is, and the Big Ten and the SEC make $100+ million per team, and the ACC stays around whatever 30 or 35, and we come back in 10 years and have this conversation, maybe there's a possibility that the ACC would continue to be a decent football playing conference with each team program operating on 1/3 of the money that the teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. But it's just a huge handicap. It's a huge disadvantage. And most likely they're not going to be able to keep up, nor do those programs, the other key in this, nor do those programs want to try to keep up making 1/3 of the money.
Right. And I agree with you. But what it seems like the SEC, the Big Ten, Fox, and ESPN is moving to is just having one consolidated power. Big Ten had their national champion, the SEC had their national championship, and everybody else do whatever y'all want to. That's what it seems like it's going to me.
Let's hope not.
Or, huh?
I hope not.
But, Mark, I mean, if you look at it, what are they doing? I mean, you got, like I said, Texas, Oklahoma. The last two powers that won't in the SEC outside of Clemson, if you want to call them a power or a blue blood program, USC and Southern Cal and UCLA. Oregon, I remember we used to joke Oregon at the toilet bowl going back to Oregon State. They are really a recent phenomenon. Washington, yeah, they've been good. Then they also been very bad too. I just think that they got the last four places that people want. But like, let's look at recruiting for a second this year. Closer to Miami is still in the ACC. Those teams still rated in the top two. Top 10 in recruiting, if I'm not mistaken. Look at what Louisville's doing in recruiting. You still have very good recruits. USC has had very good recruiting over the last couple years. And I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's about money, but also it's about what can you attract to your school. Because look at Boise State. Who would have thought how good Boise State would have been on their run for 10 years? And they don't. I guarantee you they probably don't have the money that Clemson has or some of the other schools. We could probably pull up TCU. Let's go to TCU. Think about it. TCU was a joke program for a long time to Gary Patterson. It's about putting a culture together and building. You can put all the money that you want into it. I think South Carolina, I don't want to pick on them, but I think like South Carolina, it's like you look over there and it's like, why isn't this program better? Maybe because they do play with Georgia, Alabama, and who they have beaten in the last couple of years, but maybe because they do play in a harder conference. And maybe their outcome would be better if they would have stayed with the ACC in the 1970s. Maybe their football program would have been better. Not because they're making more money, but because they're not in a more stressful league.
Okay, let me explain it this way. So there's two parts to this in terms of the money. The way I see it, two very very basic parts would be, think of it this way. Let's say you built a bakery and I built a bakery, and somebody gave you $1 million a year to run your bakery, and they gave me $300,000 to build my bakery and run it. Well, I may just be really good at what I'm doing, and you may make a bunch of mistakes and not know what you're doing, and therefore the money gap isn't substantial and the money gap doesn't matter. But if we both do a good job and if we both know what we're doing, then you're going to have the person with 3 times as much money is going to have a lot more ability to do a good job, to be successful. That's
Right.
number one. The second part of it is a lot of these people, especially administrators and other people that don't necessarily care about the football success, relate the success of the program to how much money are we making. And therefore, if we are Clemson, and regardless of racking up a ton of 11-1 seasons and conference championships, they think, well, we can go to the SEC and make 3 times as much money. That's what we care about. That's the decision that's going to be made.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, Warren. Let's say the college football playoffs say like it is, and let's say we get close to Ohio State, Alabama, and somebody from the Big 12, and Clemson still beat those teams with a big revenue. What does that prove?
Okay. The point I'm making is, yes, if that's what actually happens 10 years from now, if Clemson continues to make a third of the money that all these other schools in the Big Ten and the SEC make, and they're able to continue to operate and be successful, then it's proven that they can do it. But I'm saying it's more difficult to win with a lot less money than it is to. That's number one. And number two, there are people involved that only care about making money for the university. Therefore, they're going to want to push their program to go take the money.
Okay, well, we'll see. I really think all of this is going to hit a bubble because they're putting out so much. But you was at ESPN. I remember all those people that saw Fox right now used to be on ESPN, At a certain point, they got rid of him because they came too expensive. And I think you're going to hit a bubble eventually. Because if you keep playing these guys like Quentin Euros, and I'm not saying he's going to turn out to be a great quarterback, but you keep putting money in these people's pocket and they're not producing anything, eventually people going to say, why should I keep on paying for this? You ain't getting it. If Jimbo Fisher next year goes 9-3, 4 years in a row, and don't win the SEC or even reach the SEC championship game, was putting all that money into those guys really that good of an idea? I mean, I'm just saying,
when you say putting money in, are you talking about the schools putting money in? Because they're not supposed to be. It's supposed to be coming from
NIL, for the program. But most of those people that run those businesses probably have some relationship to the school, so they're probably that backside. Look at the kid that transferred from PITT to Southern Cal. He came back and Southern Cal started living up to their deal. So now he's like, well, he's telling on everybody know the truth, but he's coming out saying it. So
well, you're right. You're right. If you're talking about some big Texas A&M booster that's writing multi-million-dollar checks, that if Texas A&M goes 8-4 every year, are they going to get tired of writing the checks? Yes, they're going to get tired of writing the checks because they expect championships in exchange for money. Therefore, they're either going to say, this is going to stop, I'm lessening the money or cutting it off, or we need to make a change at the head coaching position. All right. I believe we've got Hunter coming in here next, here on the Voice of College Football. Hunter, how you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
Not much. I got kind of two things for you. First one is, how do you think West Virginia is going to fare this year? I'm what's his name? I'm blank on his name now. But he coached at Troy. I live not too far from Troy. The what's his name? The head coach.
Neil Brown.
Yeah, Neil Brown. He coached at Troy. He did a good job there. What is the expectation from the I know you got a channel for them from their fan base of how they expect to fare this year?
Well, we do a West Virginia show on Friday nights, and the three guys that come on that make the channel go, we got Golden Blue Dude, you got Travis Kenobi, and you got Coos Walker. They're all excellent. They're friends of mine, and they love West Virginia football, and they've got their own platforms and do a great job. But they're a bit biased, of course. They all think that West Virginia is being completely underrated. I try to take what they have to say and try to weigh it versus them being biased, of course, and that's not a criticism. It's just that's the way it is. Big 12 media is picking West Virginia 8th place out of 10 teams, only Texas Tech and Kansas below West Virginia, and Vegas has West Virginia at 5.5 wins.
5.5 wins, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like Neil Brown. He did a good job at Troy, and so I pay attention to their football because of how close they are, and everybody from that area seemed to really like him. So I always hoped that when he got hired at West Virginia, that he was able to do well there. And another thing that happened this week, during SEC Media Days, Nick Saban talked to the media, was saying, would y'all please report that, stop asking me when I'm going to retire, because all these coaches keep on telling these kids I'm going to retire. He said, why would I retire? What would I do?
Oh, I heard the same thing.
So let me ask you this. Let's say, hypothetically, let's say after this year, Saban decided to retire. If you're the athletic director, where do you go? Because I don't think a lot of Alabama thinks that we can get Dabo, and I don't know if we can. I don't know if he would leave Clemson for Alabama. I'm not so sure that he would.
I'm not so sure he would either, because why would you leave Clemson and also think, okay, I've built this incredible legacy, and really, I am like the legacy of Clemson football historically. Like, it's Dabo Swinney. I know that they did things before that. I'm not discounting their history, but there's no question their golden age is right now, and he built it. Whereas if you follow Nick Saban, what can you do that's going to be an improvement? You can't. You can technically, but it's almost impossible. It's basically impossible to improve. So all you can do is be a disappointment at Alabama.
But who do you think we
I
could?
don't know. I would want to walk into that.
The question is, who would we think had the best chance of continuing the recruiting success, and two, the production. I mean, I don't know. I'm not so sure that anybody can replicate what Saban himself has done.
No,
I'm not. So you got to think of in terms of, okay, who's going to get best to the closest that can be done, replicate, the championships, the recruiting, and things like that. And
I think the guy that I would want wouldn't take the job because he just signed an extension at Georgia. He might be the first guy I would go after.
Yeah, but I don't think Kirby, even if he wouldn't have signed that extension, I don't think he would ever came. I mean,
that's his alma mater.
Yeah. But, I mean, Dabo's interesting because if he was to, the only reason it would be is because he came from Alabama.
Yeah. Wow. Who else is that? My goodness. There's outside of Dabo, there's only been one coach since Nick Saban started at Alabama that's challenged him. Obviously, he's not coaching right now, and he doesn't seem like a good fit for Alabama, and that's Urban Meyer. So those three guys are completely separate from everybody else. And that is a great question. Who would replace Nick Saban if he decided to retire? Because I thought you were setting me up for more just the conversation that he's healthy. I wouldn't be so. What is he? He turned like 70, right?
Yeah.
He's going to be coaching 7. We've got presidents, the last 2 that have been in their upper 70s, mid to upper 70s. Why can't Nick Saban be 78 years old and coaching Alabama?
Yeah,
like, thinking he's going to be out the door in 2 years. He might be there in 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I mean he is very well in shape, not only physically but mentally.
Sure.
I mean, he's not senile like our president is, but so he has. I think he's got 5 or 6 more years left, and maybe even longer. I don't see him slowing down. And like he brought up a good point. He said, "What do you want me to do? People just want him to go off into the sunset and just quit coaching." People like Saban are so driven by not just winning championships, but like he's told. I've known several people who are close to the program, and who've told me that he genuinely enjoys the relationships and the development of the kids that he brings in his program,
which is great. I have a lot more admiration for Nick Saban, not as a coach. He's always been great, and he just keeps proving it, but more as a man. And the relationships with the student athletes, I admire much more, just hearing more and more about him, obviously, as time goes along. I almost think, and to your last point, that's it. Because most of us, we want to work hard and we enjoy our career to a certain extent and we want to do it well, but we also like our time off. But to be that great at what he does, or you see this with certain like performers or certain business people where you think, haven't you made enough money? Why do you still do this? And why do you still push yourself? Well, they would have never gotten to that point if that wasn't just in them to be like that. They wouldn't have been this successful to begin with.
And I don't think for him, I don't think it's about the money. I don't think it's about the I mean, he's got plenty of money. I mean, I mean, he's not worried. It's just like from people like him, and you're right. And I've heard, to give you a sense of some of how much of a workaholic he is. Somebody, and I believe this because of the source. But Dave told me that one year after his family got done eating Christmas dinner, that Miss Terry caught him outside on the porch talking to a recruit. That's just how he is, and he just loves to do that. So here's the guy that I think, because all the obvious names are contract up. Here's one that I think we're gonna have to see in time how he does at Baylor. But Dave Miranda is an interesting name to me.
It is. Yeah.
Because I like what he's done at Baylor in the short time, and he was a great coordinator. I just do you think Alabama would ever in a million years hire Lane Kiffin?
Possibly. I think he's a different person than he was 10 years ago. I think we need to stop just thinking about college coaches and maybe you go to the NFL.
What's the guy that coaches at the Tigers now? Not
the Lions?
The Lions, I'm sorry. Yeah.
The Detroit Lions. Who is the Detroit Lions head coach?
Didn't he coach
Matt
at Baylor?
just got fired, the former Patriots assistant. So who was with the Lions?
The guy that left for Baylor that Dave Miranda took over. He went to the NFL.
Oh, you're talking about Matt Rule. He's with the Panthers.
Panthers, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I was thinking
I'd go after somebody like John Harbaugh or Sean McVay.
Josh Daniels?
Or Josh Daniels or the 49ers coach. Shoot, can't think of his name.
But aren't those NFL guys a little bit different in the way that they want to get involved in all that recruiting and all that type of thing?
That
comes with it.
I would. Somebody help me out with Shanahan. My goodness, I can't think of Shanahan's name. I wouldn't want anything to do with it myself.
I mean, I would have said Mario Cristobal had he not gone to, Miami, but he's got ties there too. So all these high level coaches you would think of. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe. I mean, it's too early to say. But I like what he's done, and I like the culture he's developing. Sam Pittman is a name that we'll have to see in time how he does, at Arkansas. But, I mean, from a culture standpoint and everything that I've heard about him, personally as a person, I really like. So, there are some not big names that you would think of, but there are definitely a few different options out there. Yeah, I like what that comment said by Jason there. Why would an NFL coach take a college job with all the stuff that's going on?
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't either. But I'm just saying, why not? Go for it.
You can go for, you can go for it, but it's going to say who you're going to have to find a guy that likes to do all of that. And, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I just think it was interesting how Nick Saban had to address that. It's like, hey, stop telling people, my kids, all these recruits, I'm going to retire. I don't plan on doing anything. Yeah, so we'll have to see. Hopefully, that many championships later, and maybe another close to a decade, maybe we'll get out of him. I mean, he could retire tomorrow and hang his hat, and he's still considered the greatest of all time. He wins 2 or 3 more championships. I mean, that's only adding to it. So I don't think it's anything that Nick Saban has to prove anything at this point.
No, that happened a long time ago.
Oh, all right, Mark. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. I'll remind everyone we've got a Discord, and the way you join that is you go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, jump on there, and you get my picks, picks from all sorts of media members that you see on here on the Voice of College Football. And we've got a Discord where you can chat college football 24/7, 365. Like with Tim here.
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm well, thanks. I didn't plan on calling in until we started talking about the whole NIL thing earlier in the show. There's been a little gap between then and now, but I just amazed after watching Kiffin talk and watching the media talk, and especially in the chat and among other people, just how they get it confused. The fact that it's not the schools that are supposed to be, I mean, I'm not saying they're not involved, but the schools are not supposed to be involved. And so when you say, well, I think that someone should have to be there for a certain amount of time or stay to school a certain amount of time or give back the money, I just don't think these people really understand what
or
the intent was.
A cap.
Yeah, or a cap. Yeah, exactly. All these things, it's just people are getting really confused. And it's the media's fault. Or an example of someone brought up Jordan Addison again, about how he's upset that USC is not giving him what he was supposed to get, et cetera. I'm not saying that USC didn't promise him things. I don't know. But you know where that story came from? You know where that originated?
No.
Because the person who called in said Jordan Addison said that he was unhappy. Jordan Addison's never come out and said he was unhappy. That was from a UT message board is where this whole thing started. Do you remember who the finalists for Jordan Addison were?
I believe it was Alabama was involved, correct?
Yeah.
And Texas, right?
And Texas. And then Texas.
Yeah.
And he went down to Texas just before he made his decision. And there were a lot of hurt Longhorns, right? They were really upset with the fact that Jordan Addison, how dare he must be getting ripped off at USC and paid more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, this is how we know the internet. This is how this stuff rolls, right? It's just someone on a message board talks. And literally, I've seen it on ESPN. I've seen it all over the internet now. People talking about how Addison says he's unhappy. He came out and he did an Instagram saying fake news. That's all he said. Fake news. And then moved on. And people always want to say, well, how come people don't come out and say, what happened? Because they don't want to justify. If you stand around chasing, just like every politician, if they chase every bullshit story about them, they'd be constantly defending themselves. It's not a good look. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm glad. Hopefully, a few of you guys out there just got educated by Mark on what NIL is and what NIL is not. I'm not saying it's not used and people are going to abuse it, just like bags of money have been handed out at. And I'm tired of hearing this. Every school, I don't care if you're Akron, you've given kids money. All the way up to Alabama. We had I love an Alabama fan I talked to. He's a good friend of mine on here all the time. He was trying to tell us that Nick Saban, I'm not saying Nick Saban's involved, but he was saying that since Nick Saban was there, they've never bought a player. I just said, Bud, dude, listen, it's not like a slam on Alabama. Everybody does it. So, but don't make it this thing that, A&M's buying players and Bama's not. It's just kind of, I don't know, absurd.
I heard Lane Kiffin, and I think you alluded to this, make the comment this week that there should be some kind of salary cap.
Yeah.
And so I'm even thinking, I know that he understands it, but the only way to accomplish that you would have to incorporate college football and make it an entity in which all the conferences work together, and it's the NFL. And then you would say these individual contributions. I don't even know if you could do that, but you would in some fashion have to say the individual contributions that come into the entire league. Let's say somebody wants to get Quinn Ewers $1.5 million, it goes into some kind of pool, and for his in exchange for him being allowed to play within our league, then he gets 80% of that, and 20% goes into the pool and gets distributed this way or whatever. There's some kind of cap to it because of that, but otherwise you can't cap. It would be like if you complained that I made too much money on super chats, and said, Mark doesn't deserve all that money. Why are people giving him super chats? There should be a cap on it. Well, no, it's people's private money to give to whomever they want.
Yeah. Well, I just think that hopefully, and I don't know, because the NCAA seems like they're just inept. I mean, talk about going from just wrecking programs, I'm not going to name any, to being completely feckless. I mean, it's to the point where they need to get somebody to step up, because I think they do. NIL is great. It's for the kids. But I think NIL is being abused ridiculously. And I think there should be safeguards. See, that's what Saban and everyone's saying. Not sure, of exactly what they want or mean, but it's what they're saying. And I agree with that part. No one should be paid to go to a school. I think that truly ruins it. These kids should be paid. They deserve it. They've been ripped off for a century now. Well, more like maybe like last 50 years when it really got big money. But there are programs that will abuse it. We know them. They're the ones that have traditionally abused it. They will continue to abuse it, and it will go on. So there are certain schools like Alabama right now. Alabama doesn't have to pay players to come there. If all things were being equal and nobody was paying anyone, it's like steroids, right? If you got people using steroids, then your team has to use steroids and steroids just to keep up. If everything was ceteris paribus and everything was equal, Nick Saban, Alabama would crush it right now. Why? Because they've proven that they're the place to be. But it's not like that. There's always people getting paid, and it's to the point where either you're cheating. What's the old saying in the SEC? If you're not cheating, you're not trying, right? So I mean, that's the way it is. And I just kills me though when fans just sit there and again, Nick Saban talking about parity. I mean, are we really gonna have that conversation? Parity, like I'll use Akron again. Do you think the academic the athletic budget at Akron is the same as it is at Alabama, right? There had just never been parity ever in football.
No.
It used to be true. So it used to be academics, right? Would be the draw to get a degree from somewhere. That went out the window a long time ago. Then it became, where to get early playing time and get to the NFL. And now it is, where can I make the most money? But there's never, ever been a situation in this sport we all love where it's been fair and equal. It just hasn't ever been that way.
No.
So, but anyway,
absolutely.
Just a few rambling thoughts from me. But yeah, whenever I hear that, I had to call in because that Addison people get that crap so wrong. Like literally, the dude never said a word, and all of a sudden now it's like Bible truth out there that he's unhappy and USC lied to him. They're paying him, and I'm not saying USC didn't pay him. I'm not saying USC wasn't involved in all sort of stuff. I'm not even saying that what did Narduzzi say, that he was tampering? I mean, all this shit. It's just hilarious that I love it that people are coming after USC. That means they're worried. That just means they're worried. 2 years ago, no one cared what happened at USC. They could care less what USC is doing. Now it seems like every move they make, they must be up to cheating again. It's like, settle down. So, what do you think about? Did you hear anything about UCLA and them trying to be blocked from coming to the Big Ten? Have you heard anything new on that?
I haven't heard anything new. I've just heard, the pushback, and I don't know how legitimate that is and how much they're going to have to overcome to get that done. I don't know. That might be a big conversation with our guy Tony.
Tony probably knows. I mean, I don't think they can block it. There's too much money. There's too much prestige for the UC system, for UCLA to be in the Big Ten, not just in football, but for academics as well.
Yes.
So I mean, and then Willie, yes, USC and Ohio State and everyone else. I'm sure Bear Bryant at Bama was paying for players. I mean, it's not like, it's not like it's one or two big. It's not even the big teams. I think the big teams have to pay their teams less. It's the small teams like SMU that needs to pay people because they need to make a name for themselves, right? Why, if you're someone like Ohio State or Alabama, do you have to play payers at the same clip as someone at an SMU's got to pay? You don't. People are already coming to your school. It's these smaller programs. I would say, everyone points to Alabama. I mean, how hard do you think some of the other schools have to cheat like hell to try to keep up with Alabama? I think it's just a big arms race, and everyone's doing it. Anyone saying that they're not doing it, or we didn't get caught. I think the big thing that got this person in another call show kicked out was the fact that they were saying literally would not admit that it was happening. Like everyone else was doing it, but not at Alabama. And I mean, I'm just saying, come on, let's be real. Just if you want to throw mud, realize that your school's probably got a little mud on them too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's just reasonable that if everyone's doing it, yes, everyone is doing it, not just 129 out of 130, and the one that's not doing it just so happens to be the most successful. How can that possibly be?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll have it.
All right, Tim. Anything else?
No, not really. Nothing too exciting. On the Kiffin thing, we're talking about in the Discord, as a matter of fact, with Jordan Bowman. The conversation came up with a bunch of us. We're talking about who would be the next coach at Alabama. And I mean, I always thought it'd be Kiffin, but Jordan Bowman told me he flat out came out in a quote and said, "Why would I want to be, the guy that follows Nick Saban?" I mean, to think about it, the closest thing I can think of, Saban's been such as a boss. I mean, think about John Wooden and Gene Bartlow, right? Or Bartow,
Yeah.
Bartow,
Yeah.
Bartow, something like that.
Yeah.
Dude
Bartow.
follows them up, like loses like 3 games a year, 50, over 50 wins, like 9 or 8 losses, and they fire him. He makes it to the Final Four, and they fire him. That's why you don't follow a legend.
Yeah. How do you possibly replace that? If you follow up Nick Saban, let's say you become, I don't know, you go to college football playoffs, but you win a national championship, let's say 1 in like 8 or 9 years, you win 1, and you're going to the college football playoff on a fairly regular basis. You're one of the best teams in the SEC. Well, that's going to look horrible. The fans are going to look at you as a failure. There's no way to replace that.
Yeah. And then for Kirby, why do you leave a place that's going to put statues up and sing songs at 2:00 in the morning in bars for you, and then go there and be the sacrificial lamb to take one on the chin for whoever can't keep up or live up to the ghost of Nick Saban? So good luck, Alabama, getting someone to fill that position, because I mean, you need someone who's crazy, a young, crazy, great person that has a lot of confidence in them, and hopefully they'll do well. Kind of like what happened with Kiffin going to USC after Pete Carroll. I mean, there's no way he was ever going to survive that, let alone on sanctions. But you're going to need someone brash and crazy like that, and hopefully they'll have their ducks in a row.
We will have a heck of a discussion on here when that news breaks and we jump on here live, especially if Alabama has it all planned out where they know his successor and they have it all lined up where Nick Saban's retiring or handing it kind of like Urban Meyer, boom, Ryan Day, and introduce him. Yeah, that'll be something else. All
right. Thanks again. And when you get all your stuff, when you moving all your stuff officially in?
Well, some of it's here. That's a great question. These moving companies are something else. That's all I'll say.
All right. Good luck to you.
You get this big long window.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
My experience. Thanks, Tim. We'll see you. Tim's on Discord with, we got, I don't want to leave anybody out because we got about 60 people on there, but One Scoop John's on there all the time, and Ronan and Jordan Bowman, and of course, Exploring with Ben and Sam and Eric and all sorts of good people there on Discord. So go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, sign up for Discord. You get to request exclusive live streams, and you get my picks, and you get Discord, and you get, we're going to have a number of media members make their selections as we did last season. And I get to say this for another, 5 weeks. I won our 12 pack in terms of best prediction record, both against the spread and straight up. Edged out Steve Dace. I may only get to say that for another 5 weeks. I may tank it this year. Who knows? All right, we got J-Dub on the line. How's it going, J-Dub?
Special message for Tim Prangley. Listen closely. Tim and I were in Yellow and Navy Guy's stream earlier, and Yellow and Navy Guy didn't have the courage to let me finish my statement, and abruptly bumped me live from the stream. Because he didn't have the backbone to let me finish what I was saying.
Okay.
I was not denying that money is going to players at Alabama. What I was saying was that they're not using money to initially bring the players to Tuscaloosa. Once they're at Tuscaloosa, what happens then, God only knows. Can you imagine? You're Nick Saban. The whole world wants to put you on the cross. They would love to hang you from a sour apple tree. Remember when LSU, when Ed Orgeron shot his mouth off about winning at Bryant-Denny, and a player had the cell phone going, had the cell phone going in the locker room, and it got out. You can't hide something. If some Alabama coach, a recruiter, a position coach, Nick Saban himself, actually said to a recruit, "We've got money for you," some player's going to have that on his phone. somebody's going to step forward and say that. They're going to say that if James Franklin does it at Penn State, if Ryan Day does it at Ohio State. These coaches are being very, very careful about this. That's my point. Say it's not. It's the keeping the money out of recruiting them to the school. Once they're at the school, let them earn what they earn. And I've got no doubt in my mind that there's been all sorts of money funneled to Alabama players once they got to Tuscaloosa. My point is there wasn't money dangled out in front of them to get them to come there in the first place. Nick Saban shows up in your living room and he puts his hands on your kitchen table and he's got national championship rings on every finger. He says, I've got more first round draft choices than I've got losses in the last 25. I've almost got twice as many first round draft choices as I have combined losses in the last 15 years. No kid that I've ever recruited who's been here for 3 years has failed to leave without a national championship ring. He doesn't need to throw money at him.
Okay, so there are certain things that we can talk about that we know that are facts, and then there's other things that we have no idea about. But there's something in the middle that's like makes sense. It's reasonable, but I can't confirm it. So you said a lot of things there that make a whole lot of sense that we don't know factually for sure. But yes, we know that NIL exists, of course, and it exists everywhere. And we know that the accusations are out there that certain schools, and we could name 3 or 4 that seem to be high on the list, are alleged to be inducing players to come to campus and sign before, and that's against the rules. But I would think that Nick Saban, in addition to everything that you just named, for all those reasons why a player should come play there, because they can win championships and they can be groomed and developed to play in the NFL and have a better chance of being groomed and drafted for the NFL than anywhere in the country, that all he has to say is, NIL, okay, you've got a lot of questions. I'm going to provide you with some answers, but actually we're going to turn you over to our compliance department. They will answer all your questions. But all I can tell you is we cannot discuss specifics right now, but it's proven you can talk to, hey, all these guys talk, all these players talk, and they talk not just to their own class. Seniors in high school that are the top players in the country talk to guys that are in college that they played with or against. And, social media is crazy. So they all talk to each other to say, what's the deal at Alabama? And Nick Saban has been very upfront, as you allude to say, we currently have a total collective that's paying our players $3 million. So whether that's the exact number or he's shorting that or he's being completely factually accurate, regardless, there's millions of dollars available for Alabama players. So I would agree with you that they don't need to induce them with specific deals and risk having problems and allegations and controversy and violations against them when they can easily convince a high school player, we're Alabama, we have NIL opportunities for you.
Right. All I'm saying is the chat room, half of the chat is surrounded by trees and don't understand that means they're in the middle of a forest. All these accusations. Oh, Saban's, they've been dropping bags for years. Clinton Dix got paid. Oh, Jimbo Fisher said he was an assistant. He said he offered my. Prove it. Prove it. Don't say it happened. Prove that it happened. Now I'll tell you this, when I was an Alabama student, I saw with my own eyes, I saw Cornelius Bennett driving around in a rusted, beat up Ford F-150 that you could spit through the holes in the floor. And that was his truck. And he made All-American. And by God, the next semester, I pulled into the Ferguson Center and parked right next to who? Cornelius Bennett, who was driving a crimson red IROC Z28 Camaro. He must have got a pretty good Christmas present from one of his aunts or uncles. I saw it happen to Michael Ainsley, who was on the basketball team. I heard Mark Gottfried, who ended up being Alabama's basketball coach for a while a few years ago. I heard Mark Gottfried and Jim Farmer talk about Ainsley was going to come to. Ainsley had just went out and been given a Mazda Miata. I know these things are happening. I saw Bennett get an IROC Z. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. What I'm saying is you got to have some proof. And the other thing, the other thing about it is I know I understand how people say it's hypocritical for Saban because he's on the top to say, well, there needs to be parity. Everybody knows there's not going to be parity. There never has been, and there never will be. All I think he's trying to say is we need a set of guidelines so that everybody knows the rules. Then, once that's in place, some schools are still going to have advantages over others because of who they are. But let's get some guidelines in place so that we're not the Wild West. There's at least a set of rules, and then I'm going to try to beat you under those new rules. I mean, I think that's always trying to say. I just think he's just trying to say, let's make it even for everybody, and then let the best man win because he knows he's going to be one of the teams that's going to be considered the best men, just like A&M will be, just like USC, just like Texas, just like some of these, or Ohio State, some of these other rich schools. They're going to have advantages. Saban's just saying, let's come up with some kind of a guideline.
So the one thing I will say is, first of all, I don't pretend to know exactly what's going on out there. And for anybody that does, I think you would be foolish to say that you do know unless you've experienced it firsthand. Gene Jelks was the player, in the early 90s that blew the whistle a couple of years after he left, correct?
Yes, Gene Jelks. Yep.
Okay. So I would think with all the players that are recruited and signed, and many 5 stars or high 4 stars that don't turn out, they maybe didn't enjoy their experience. And this is before this transfer portal, and you could just hop in the transfer portal and be good to go somewhere else, that there would be more anybody, to your point, that would blow the whistle and say, you know what, I saw this, I was offered this, write a book, get your name out there. I would think that there would be more of that going on.
Yeah, and not just Alabama. It could be anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere. I'm not.
Somebody's at Michigan. Anywhere. Somebody's at Michigan State, and they enter the transfer portal, and now they're mad at Michigan State. They're going to take it. They're going to say, "Well, you know what? They offered me this and this and this." It's never going to be an even playing field. Look, Brock Purdy, the Iowa State quarterback, and a $25,000 contract with John Deere dealers in Iowa to go around and make some appearances at John Deere dealerships in the state of Iowa. $25,000. That's a nice little chunk of change to show up and sign some posters. But Bryce Young got $1 million at Alabama. It's not ever going to be an even playing field. But I do think, and I'm not trying to slurp Saban, I'm just saying, let's get some guidelines in place so that if you beat me, I can say, well, you know what? You beat me under the same rules that I had to live by. And one of the nicest things we could do, I know everybody's all fired up now, and I probably made it worse by going crazy, but let's all have a little peace, love, and understanding here for Mark. Look at our clean shaven host. What we need to do is we need to remember that Amazon link. Because if we're talking about millions of dollars, we're talking about a couple of fat cats at Amazon making millions of dollars. You can go spend $100 at Amazon and have something dropped off at the house. How about having a little bit of that coin drop into Mark's lap? Mash the thumbs up, Amazon link, people. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, J-Dub. I appreciate it. You guys know me, for those that watch on a regular basis. When I think I've got complete control on a topic, like we're talking about the best quarterbacks, or we're talking about the best teams the last 10 years, or whatever it is, and it's usually related to the field or some kind of rankings or something, I'm going to come on here and I'm going to be like, bam, 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 this is what I believe. This is how I back it up. We get into this territory, I can tell you what sounds reasonable, what makes sense, what I've heard, what I've read, what I've learned from you guys, all of it. But when I don't have a handle on a topic, I'm never going to pretend that I do. Yes, just the only thing J-Dub said that I will slightly correct there at the end would be this whole Amazon thing. It's trillions. I saw the number 1.6 trillion. That's like mind-boggling, because that's a 1,000 billion. That's 1,000 billion. Is it 100,000 million? Whatever it is, 10,000 million maybe. Reasonable Gump's here to talk some college football. Look at this.
Mark, man, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I heard you guys earlier talking about that you don't think anyone would want to take the Alabama job after Saban's gone.
Well, I didn't say it like that. I just said, of course, somebody's going to take the job because they're going to hand somebody about 7 or 8 million a year, or who knows with inflation 10 years from now or whatever it is. And somebody's going to take the job and take the challenge and understand it's still a great place to coach. But just there's going to be certain guys with reservations about taking that job.
If it were you, would you try to hire someone who's really good out there, but is inevitably going to not be as good as Saban was? Or would you try to maybe look for someone young and sort of up and coming and sort of be able to give them less money, but sort of, let them grow a bit, but it's more understandable if they don't hit the mark right away?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go for the latter myself.
Yeah, and understanding that the fan base, the reasonable fans, would understand, okay, this guy is really good and we're going to have some growing pains. I'll throw out a name, Marcus Freeman. He's Marcus Freeman 2.0, and we really think we've got a superstar in the making. But hey, if we go 8-4, 9-3 a couple times, that may happen because he's not polished, as opposed to going out and getting Dabo's way up the list, obviously. Lincoln Riley or whomever you would say, Lane Kiffin. Yeah,
If Lane Kiffin would talk, I would take that very seriously. I'm not sure how attractive the job would be to him, but if he was willing to come to the table, I think that should be one of the first calls you make.
I still, once I surveyed the college landscape and I ruled out Dabo to a certain extent, not that I wouldn't go after him, but I don't know why he would take the job other than it's his alma mater.
Right.
As soon as I went the NFL route, that might be the way I would go.
You might try to hire a coach from the NFL?
Yeah.
Huh. How often does that happen? Because NFL hires college coaches all the time. But how often does it go the other way? Jim Harbaugh, I guess.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, Lou Holtz. It happens, but they usually have nowhere else to go, and so they go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because they're successful, but Alabama's Alabama. So, but this could be a different deal.
Right.
I think and I'm not an expert on NFL head coaches as it stands right now. This is not 1990 where I could just give you a bio on every NFL coach. So I'd have to do my homework, but there's a few that come to mind. Like John Harbaugh is a great coach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's the only one for a while there. When I say while there, I mean 5 or 6 years ago, he was the only team in the NFL who knew how to run the ball. It seemed like.
Yeah. Like if I could get John Harbaugh to coach at at Alabama, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of out there, Mark, but me and my dad have talked about the possibility. Now, this guy's really new. He's only coached, I think, 2 years, actually. But Deion Sanders, that could be an interesting name.
Oh, it is interesting.
Because just think about it. How many other people do you think would be better at motivating young black athletes to come play
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
think
he's
that'd be
already
interesting.
doing
And
it.
the guy's got an amazing personality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of was just toying around with that idea too.
Well, and I don't want to take anything away from Dion, so I'm going to make a judgment call. I might be completely wrong, and obviously he knows football, but I'm going to make a slight assumption that that's not his strong suit. You know, drawing up plays, schemes, all of that. But obviously, that's why you have strong coordinators, and he's the motivator. He's the face of the deal.
You know, Mark, a lot of people would say, at least offensively, that's not Kirby Smart's thing either.
Yeah.
He's drawing up great
Sure.
plays. He has Todd Monken do it for him, and it worked eventually.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But here, man, I got a different question for you. Do you think Tennessee will ever beat Alabama as long as Saban is still there?
Oh, that's great. Well, they have not had a really good team his entire time.
Right.
Saban. You know, they had a couple Butch Jones teams that were decent.
Mm-hmm.
And they came close a few times. You know, they had the Terrence Cody game.
Mm-hmm. Then I think in 15 or so is when Jarrett Garantano, I think, was trying to drive down but threw an interception or something.
Yep.
It was a one-score game.
I think they were up like 14-10, meaning Tennessee, and then Derrick Henry scored a touchdown with maybe 4 minutes left.
Right.
They've had a couple, but the other ones have been like
blowouts.
You know, it's the CBS 3:30 game, and it's 28-zip after the first quarter, and it's like I'm out. Okay. No. No.
Interestingly enough, Mark, and I don't get it, but when I talk to people and we look at Alabama's schedule and people try to find, who's going to be that guy this year, if there is one, who's going to make them go 11-1, because I think this is going to be a great Alabama team. So who can do it? I get people telling me Tennessee and Arkansas more than I get a Texas A&M or an Ole Miss. And I guess both of those teams, by the way, Alabama hasn't lost to them, either of them, since Saban's been there. So maybe this is, I guess, sort of foolhardy for me to think this way, but it's been so long, but they're both just kind of in the, I have to see it before I'll believe it'll happen. It's like neither Arkansas nor Tennessee, first of all, have the talent to realistically compete with an Alabama team on a regular basis. I don't think they're.
But they don't have to play them on a regular basis. That's the thing.
True.
Like you saw the Arkansas game last year.
Well, yeah,
that was a good game.
I think that was the worst Alabama team since 2007. Some people would say.
Okay.
But I know they don't have to play them on a regular basis, but I'm saying that lowers the odds, I think, a lot more than other teams. Like, I don't know. I still think Ole Miss would have a better shot than either of those two.
Well, yeah. Ole Miss, we've seen the last 2 years which way that can go. Ole Miss really ran the ball well 2 years ago and gave Alabama fits. And then, of course, they took a lot of chances on fourth downs last year, and they got blown out in a hurry. The thing is that the teams that have the recruiting base, and I'm thinking LSU first and foremost, they're obviously down right now. And the teams that have really good coaches, namely Arkansas, they don't have the recruiting resources to match Alabama, but they're doing about as well as they can right now. They do have a quarterback in KJ Jefferson. They are playing in Arkansas.
True.
I believe.
Yeah, they are.
So they're playing at home. And of course, Brett Bielema had a team that came that close to pulling off an upset at home against Alabama. And that KJ Jefferson, he's the kind of player that he's not one of the very best quarterbacks in the country, but on a given, he can be a monster on a given. He's just physically, if he's having a hot day passing and he's just a terror to try to tackle in the open field.
Mm-hmm.
And Arkansas is a much better defensive. I don't want to say much better. They're decidedly better defensively than Tennessee.
Well, that's Tennessee's weakness. Everyone thinks Tennessee is going to have a great offense, but Swiss cheese on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Well, all three of those games are away. So if there was going to be one, I guess I see where people are coming from with saying it's going to be one. It's going to be, saying it could be Arkansas or Tennessee. And I do understand that Arkansas, played them really close last year. That last touchdown came within like 20 seconds left of the game. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I get it. It's still, they could have won if they'd have gotten an onside kick and thrown a Hail Mary. I get it, but still.
Yeah.
And that Alabama team was just, I mean, look at what happened against LSU. The Alabama team probably maybe should have lost to LSU that year. Should have absolutely lost to Auburn. So I don't know. I'm not really seeing it from either of those. To be honest, I'm not seeing it from Ole Miss either, but only because that Ole Miss game is late. It's not early like it normally is. So by that point, I think Lane Kiffin will have shown most of his cards. He's going to have to have played Texas A&M and Arkansas and these other teams. And I don't think he's going to be able to, surprise anybody that late in the season.
And they're playing Mississippi State at home.
Alabama, yeah.
Yes.
I think it's before Tennessee. No, it's not before Tennessee. It's somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Texas A&M is before Tennessee. That's right.
I've heard kind of a chic upset pick out there is Mississippi State at home against Georgia.
No, I'm not seeing that one. Although 2 years ago, Mississippi State could have done it, but I don't know. I don't think Georgia's going to play a ranked team until the SEC championship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Think about that.
Well, Oregon should be ranked
I
out
guess
of the
so.
gate. All right, Reasonable Gum.
All right, man.
Appreciate it. Have a good
later.
one. As I am being reminded to look at the clock, it's after 8 o'clock, 8:02, 8:03, something in that range. So, man, if we could take everybody here, we got about 160 on the line, move you all over to the Miami channel. We've got our Miami show with the Wholesome One, as we always do on Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Otherwise, if you can't handle Miami football talk, even though you guys can talk about whatever you want in the live chat, so you should all move over to the Miami channel for Miami football talk with the Wholesome One. And again, you can talk about whomever you want. We will be here at 8 o'clock on Friday night for West Virginia Live, and then followed by another call-in show, 9 o'clock Eastern time. And maybe I'll take more notes on more ridiculous statements made at the ACC and SEC media days. They seem to be everywhere. We could start videos on that. I could post a video probably every week on dumb things that are stated on social media or on the sports networks. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for the various super chats. Everybody hit the like button, as J-Dub would say. Please hit the like button. And when you shop on Amazon, you can use the link that we provide, and it sends a few bucks my way. Right here, the voice of college football. Appreciate you being here. Again, we're doing Miami right now on the Miami channel. Tomorrow night, it's West Virginia at 8. It's a live call-in show at 9 Eastern.